This video contains spoilers. Yes, spoilers. So if you haven't played or finished the game, it's best that you close this window right now. This is your final warning. Spoilers inbound. 3, 2, 1, and here we go.
Okay, so first of all, congratulations on the release. It's what I think a 95 on Metacritic. You've gotten 10 on 10s from just about every place. It's basically, I think, the third highest rated game of the generation. It's behind Mario and Zelda. So, how does it feel being, receiving this kind of praise, this kind of global acclaim and crazy fan reaction?
It feels weird. We worked so hard for so long, and I feel like for 5 years I've been fighting and pitching and defending and trying to sell everybody under the sun on this game. And I think coming out and having this kind of response is fantastic, and it's so good, I think, for the team to have that kind of feedback. I think for me, it is hard to believe that it's real a little bit, but it's amazing. I'm excited to be considered a peer to a lot of these games.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we fight so hard for, is to really do something that is as inspiring to others as the games that are inspiring to me.
Yes, I saw your review reaction video, which was, by the way, the sweetest, best possible reaction to something like that I've seen. And I mean, I can understand. Yeah, I can understand how it's like. I think 5 years of your life you've put into this, and like you said, it was a difficult process just to get the game pitched. So I can understand exactly how that might feel at that point, at the end of it all. So one of the things that I was actually curious about here was, I mean, this is a game that is extremely hugely story focused. And there are so many parts of the game which can be spoiled by just a single scene, like a single screenshot. Like a single screenshot of Kratos with his blades would have ruined the halfway twist, or just the ending scene with the subtitles on, that would ruin the ending twist. So how is it that you somehow managed to keep all of it secret, not let any of that get leaked out beforehand?
Yeah, that nearly killed me. So that probably, there's a lot of stress in trying to get everybody on board with concepts and ideas and pitching and convincing and trying to keep everybody on target, and that's really hard.
Yes.
Right? But then at the end, that last year and a half, trying to ensure that everybody across the world aligned with what we're doing, doesn't let any information out on accident, is wow. I have never experienced that much stress. It is a wonder that nothing got out, and actually, things did get out. Information got out, and fortunately, it didn't permeate too far out into the sort of ether to have everybody understand it, and we were able to keep on top of it. But it was very stressful to try and ensure that everybody could get the same experience, and it required a lot of great collaboration between the marketing and PR groups to be flexible when I would have a fit of something and realize, oh my gosh, we have to get this out. Let's go now. Our plan was to do this, but let's just go. We have to do this, or something coming up and getting released, and us just getting on top of it as quickly as possible. And even though the information was there, it went away fast enough that maybe nobody caught it, which is great.
Or they just didn't believe it. Or at some point they just saw it and just dismissed it as one of many fake leaks.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one advantage, is that there was enough fake ones out there that it can be sort of written off as that, even if it does come from a large organization that everybody knows, like the SRB, that put something up, and you're just like, oh, crud, we didn't talk about this. Shoot, that's giving away too much. And then, they're super collaborative. They just took it down. We've had a lot of those that it was never any malicious intent from anybody. I mean, that was the great thing, is I think everybody saw the same need. And most of it initially was unfazed, but once people played the game, they realized, no, you have to experience this for the first time on your own, right? It is truly, the comparison I make is like going into the Sixth Sense when somebody says, and have you seen Sixth Sense?
Yes, I know the final twist.
Oh, okay, good. I was like, I don't want to spoil this for you.
irony.
Like somebody saying, oh yes, watch The Sixth Sense. Bruce Willis is dead. It's awesome. And you're just like, oh.
Well, now I have no reason to. Yeah.
Yeah, it like loses all its weight. It's like this is built of hundreds of moments that are like that, and it could very much have gone like just as bad, like the whole Khan thing with Star Trek, where people turned against the creators because of the secrecy, right?
Yes.
And we were starting to get some people turning against, getting upset that we weren't sharing a lot of information, and it's hard to convince people that, hey, we're not sharing it because it's really important that you experience this.
You're not just being jerks trying to hide it. You're just hiding it because it's the best way to experience the game. Well, yeah, I mean, I think it worked out because there's this crazy amount of speculation about the game at this point. So, because the game sets up so many things for the sequel, and like it's sort of like with Metal Gear or Zelda, except unlike those, this one is also drawing on an existing mythology. So there's people who are going crazy thinking about exactly what happens in the sequels. And I mean, is this some sort of fan theorizing, something you anticipated for with this game?
I think when we first started, no, but then as we started going and the little bits of information we'd share, or E3 2016, we showed everything, the amount of people that started theorizing just from that really had me like, wow, okay, they're going to go to town with this thing. So I definitely thought, I like to thread in so much to these stories that it's not just randomly dropping something in, but saying, okay, here's my plan for this. We're not going to do it in this game, but here's what we're going to put in so that when people look back, they'll go, oh, it began all the way back there.
Yeah.
There are things on the surface that everybody knows about. There are things on the sort of the middle ground that some people have seen, and there are things far in the background that nobody has seen. But when you go back and you play again after maybe playing another game, if we make another one, then it will all kind of connect and make sense. Like I had said earlier that in my head, I tend to plan far in the future because it allows me to really think about how everything is going to flow and understand sort of the general development of each characters, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many games this sort of storyline will end up being, because even when I think about like 5 games in advance, the 5 games in advance actually goes beyond this storyline to another storyline and says, all right, I see how this progresses. I even skip ahead even farther than that and say, like, how would I end this franchise? I have no idea if I'm even going to be alive when that happens.
Yeah.
Especially if I have to make another one of these. It's entirely possible it's going to kill me.
I hope not.
I hope not as well.
Yes.
I think that would be bad.
That would be bad.
I will learn better balance.
So, I mean, yeah, that's, I guess, it's one of the things that here is you're making these games, you're drawing on existing mythologies, and you're putting your own unique spins and twists on them. Like, the final twist in this game is essentially a really clever interpretation of Loki and Ragnarok. And I guess my question is, how do you adapt the existing mythology without necessarily spoiling it for people already familiar with the mythology?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, as we've done all the mythologies, we've always tried to find our own way in, meaning there is an inherent sort of respect for the foundation of the mythology, but then is there a way to say, it's plausible this person could have been invested or involved in this specific situation? With Norse myth, and this is the interesting thing, I think, when people don't really study it, and I mean like really look at multiple sources, they might say, oh, well, you're taking all these liberties and changing everything, and it's like, actually, a lot of the liberties that we take are because there are scholars in sort of dispute. They're disputing, I've done this translation, and I believe Freya and Frigg are the same person, right?
Yes.
In fact, I believe Freya and Frigg and Freyr are all the same person, and that they've, over time, through different translations, sort of bifurcated into multiple people. And we've kind of used this sort of disagreement amongst either translations or historians to say, okay, how would we take that information? Where do we stand, right? Do we believe that, or do we believe this? And then we say, all right, well, we believe this. And our story intentionally takes place before the history is written. So this period of time that actually is telling the story of the gods and the monsters of this mythology.
Mhm.
It's a period of time when they were alive, when no one was writing about them, right?
Yes.
The people who write about them, who record these stories, are the people who, after the Great War is over, there is somebody who will record all this information, and that is kind of what will come out to be the Eddas, right?
Yes.
And I think the idea of the prehistory sort of being fluid, right? Because you look at, I mean, the interesting thing about Norse myth for me was how fluid it was even after it was originally written, because of kind of the transitions of trying to pull paganism or people away from paganism, so that there was, an attempt, I think, for Christianity to come in and start modifying some of Norse myth to bring some of the paganistic beliefs out of there in this attempt to sort of bring everybody towards one sort of path. But then you've also got, again, different translations, and the different translations bring different interpretations, and then you've got historians, they all bring different interpretations there, so it has this fantastic sort of living history that it just keeps sort of slightly modifying, and it's hard to tell what's the original and what really is the core of what they were intending to say.
Yes. So I mean, you're actually right. I was at this museum with an Vikings exhibit, I think a few weeks before God of War released, and I was looking at all these ways that Christianity sort of started taking strands from this and from Norse myths, and once it reached those regions. So, I mean, I guess your point here is that you take all the varying interpretations and then just add your own on top of them. So it's hard to tell which one is going to be spoiled.
Yeah. Or find the one that has the most dispute and go, and that's interesting because we also look at this character differently, right? It's like a lot of people will get stuck, I think, on who was whose father or mother, right? And I think to me that's the least interesting part of this, is that you start to get genealogy that is a little fuzzy, right? Because of the way that history was recorded and how perhaps, and this is again my own theorizations on this, is that when one wants to start breaking up the different facets of a person, if they're like, oh, well, I don't want this bad part of this person to ruin who this person is in history, I'm going to create another person who carries on that bad part, right? And they represent that bad part. So there's so much, I think, in that phrase, history is written by the victors, right? In that sense that, okay, whoever's really writing the history books is going to tell you what they think. Is that really what happened? Usually not.
Yeah, there's like a grain of truth. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I actually like the idea that this is the original true story and history sort of distorts it over time. That'll be interesting to see in the hopefully follow-ups. One question about those that I have is, and this is again, I'm hoping nobody who hasn't finished the game, reads or listens to this interview. Right near the end, when Freya leaves with Baldur's dead body, Atreus turns to Kratos and asks him if there would ever be a time if he would let him kill him. And Kratos says, if it means saving your life, yes. Now, given the really thorny history Kratos has with killing fathers, it sort of felt like a really heavy-handed foreshadowing and echoing. And
well, it's interesting. That moment wasn't part of the original script. That moment was born out of, I had, probably, 10 playtests in a row where people were just hating what we did to Freya, right?
Yeah.
They were so invested. They loved the character. And then, we would have or maybe two people in each playtest that were just really angry about it. And I was fascinated and trying to understand, like, okay, what did we not do right, in that moment?
Yeah.
And finally, after, I think, 10 people had given that comment, I was really looking at it and trying to talk to the writers and say, I don't know what it is we've missed. I feel like, I would extrapolate this information, whether I have kids or not, right? The concept of saying if my mother, if my father, if my sisters were in any danger, I would 100% give my life to allow them to live, right?
Yes.
And it's sort of a weird sort of family thing that I feel like is ingrained in everybody. But that verbalization made me realize that it is not ingrained in everybody. It is not something that I think is instinctive for every single person, right? Or maybe not instinctive in the point that if they never really thought about it, right? Whereas we kind of overanalyze every aspect of every decision we make. So the thought was, all right, what if we allow Atreus to be the audience who is really struggling, and they're misplacing their feedback on our development of Freya versus understanding why she made that choice? Because one of the last people had basically said, I just don't understand why she would be so weak and let her son kill her. That's so weak. She's a strong female character. And I was like, she is, and I don't understand why people aren't seeing that. And then from that, we said, all right, so Atreus can say exactly what they're saying to us.
Yes.
And then Kratos, which she gets this amazing moment, one that we didn't even realize we were missing, which was, I don't even think he realizes he just said something really nice to his son.
Yes.
Right after that sense of like, I would give up my life for you. He's giving permission to the audience to say this is not something that makes you weak, right? This is something that shows that you have character and strength of character, to say that someone else's life is more important than yours. And that her whole drive as a character was to create Baldur this permanent magic, right? This permanent sort of lasting legacy for her. That everything else, magic that she created, was fleeting. Magic would blossom and then wither, right? Mm-hmm. Everything was fleeting. He was the lasting effect. He was legacy for her. She just lost herself a little bit in how far she went with creating that legacy. And that addition, those lines, clicked 100% after every playtest. Like, nobody had any confusion. Nobody interpreted that she was a weak character because of that, which is great. Because, again, that is one of the things where I think a lot of people misinterpret it two ways. One, they think she's weak because they're like, why would she let her son kill her? And it's like, again, that's her life is her son. She, as a mother, would lay her life down for her son. But two, Kratos was not protecting her. Kratos was not doing any of that for her. In fact, he knew when he did it that it was going to be extremely unpopular and that he was probably going to make an enemy of somebody who treated him very fairly throughout this entire game.
Yes.
But he was doing it for his son. He was doing it so his son did not witness a child killing their parent,
yes.
right? He did not want that legacy passed on. And I think those 2 points are so critical to that ending and landing. And I feel like, you know, as we then went into our later playtest, they all seemed to land good because nobody was trying to focus on the wrong moments there.
Yes. And I mean, of course, I mean, like you said, I mean, it's Kratos trying to give his son not give his son the legacy of a child killing their parent. But I mean, now, of course, I'm wondering if he inadvertently ended up passing that on anyway. When he said yes.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I'm not expecting any spoilers for the sequel. But I did have one question about the sequel. So there's this huge plethora of side content in this game. And in some cases, I'm going to say the side content is even better than the main story content. It's really, really good. And do you plan on actually continuing any of the stories that you start in the side quests and side content in the sequels, if there are sequels?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Every one of those things is a part of the whole tapestry, and they are critical to propping up the overarching story. We're putting a lot of pieces in motion, and when going into the second one, all those pieces are feeding into the whole, right? And the whole is a very complex story that I'm trying to figure out how to break down into that simplest element so that you can push through it with a clear understanding of what your goal is, right? I kept using an example at the beginning of this game of Fallout 3 in saying that, you know, Fallout 3 is extremely complicated. It is a vast and crazy labyrinthian story, but you begin that game and you find out, my dad's Liam Neeson, my dad's missing, find your dad, right? And that is the driver throughout all of that, right? It is the reverse Taken. And you basically have a simple way to drive through it, but you have a lot of complex things happening around. And, you know, as what we set up and put in motion on this first game, we've got a lot of pieces, but it should always be driven by that simple sort of understanding. But yeah, everything will, you know, continue. There, like I said, there is stuff that is in here that is set up that I think people will be very surprised, like, oh my gosh, no way! That's not only is it a part of it, but it's a sort of an interesting consequence that would come back. Everything in the world has consequences.
Yep. I mean, I guess that's the one thing that was missing from the original games, in a sense. I think Kratos did a whole lot of things and never had to suffer consequences from them. And I guess that brings me to a question I've had, which is going into God of War game versus I think the previous one that you worked on the most was God of War 2. And
Hmm.
what was the difference in mindset between approaching God of War 2 is more like a a popcorn summer blockbuster flick in terms of its storytelling and set pieces and action versus something so much more measured and moderate like this one. What was the difference in mindset?
I mean, it was really a different person that I was. From going from one to two, I was directing my first game on two, so that was I had to figure out how to be a director, how to create a game from scratch,
Mm-hmm.
right? That even though we had foundationally everything that we built in the first one, I was figuring out the entire flow of this game and trying to understand how do you do that, right? And I went from overly ambitious to under ambitious to the perfect mixture in the middle. I believe some people say it was a little too long still.
Well, I think it's the
And
best, one of the best paced games I've played.
oh, thank you. I'm very happy that it turned out the way that it did, and it was the first thing that I worked on. So it
Mm-hmm.
really gave me that confidence, I think, to start trusting my instincts.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finished writing and sort of planning out three, and realized that I was pretty burned out at that point, and I don't think I was going to be able to survive going all the way through because I had gone from one to two, and then the sort of half a year or almost a year of planning on three,
Mm-hmm.
all without a break, like just 2003 to 2008, like without a break, and that was exhausting. And I realized even at that time, I was like I don't know anything. I started this in a vacuum, and I haven't learned anything beyond what I've learned on my own. And I have to go learn from other people. I have to go find out what I don't know.
Yeah.
So for me, it just kind of all worked out really well. But doing that changed me fundamentally. Who I was in 2005 and who I was when I came back in 2013, very different, right? The way I approached everything was very different. So it was a little easier, I think. It was harder to get people convinced, but from an understanding of how to figure this game out, it was definitely, it felt natural. Like all the stuff I was approaching, the way I was telling this, the way I explained it to people from the beginning, I was like, look, this is how we're going to do it. Simple story, complex characters, and we can build everything out from there. Right? Focus it on it is a father-son journey, a coming of age for both of these characters on the road. That's it. Everything else will come as we move through. We didn't start with plotting of like so and so wants to kill so and he's really like wants this. It's like those characters came from what kind of interactions and what they would offer, and then the concept of limiting the number, like something that we're criticized, I think, a little bit about now. Is there are not a lot of characters, not a lot of bosses, and that's intentional. 100%. You look at the first God of War game,
Yes.
not a lot of bosses.
Yeah, three bosses.
Not a lot of characters. And I think that's good. I thought God of War 3, I love it, but God of War 3 is like the sort of swan song for Greek mythology. It's a lot of characters because you spent two games building up relationships. Now we're introducing it to a new world, and like a fish going into the tank, it needs to adjust. You got to leave the bag in the water for a little bit before you release it in, and then go free.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, and I think so that this brings up an interesting point. I'm sure you've heard this one a lot, which is the father son story. And this is something, I mean, a lot of people have said that the game took inspiration or cues from The Last of Us. And I'm not even
Yeah.
necessarily specifically asking about that, but one thing that as I was playing God of War, I mean, stood out to me was how much, for example, the UI is so similar to Horizons. So, what kind of technology and idea sharing is there between your studio and the other studios in Sony Worldwide Studios?
Oh, there's tons. As much as we have time for, we're always talking to each other. And we, like the UI specifically, we've looked at tons of games, Destiny, Battlefield,
Mm-hmm.
just so many different games, and each one of them handles it in a different way. And we're kind of like, oh, that's interesting. We should do look at that. Even Warcraft, we're like, oh, that's cool. Look what they did there.
Mm-hmm.
We try to get inspired and things that we don't know very well, right? We've not done a game like this where we had such a deep crafting and menu system. And arguably, I think, it is our first outing, so I don't think it was perfect. I think we have a lot of improvement we can make on it. But, it's a good sort of first understanding. The thing with the Last of Us, for me, I think a lot of people say it as a dig, which I've never really understood. But I just like, oh, all you're doing is making The Last of Us. Like, okay, but one, I am incredibly inspired by Neil and his team. Like, they are absolute, just space aliens with their abilities. You know, the otherworldly with how freaking talented they are and how much they bring and elevate the medium. And I think to me, I would love to be considered as somebody who, alongside or even, within the proximity of them, help to elevate the work that we do, help to make people see the work that we do through a different lens. So I will never, ever be bothered by the fact that we are compared to Last of Us, simply because I think it is truly a watershed moment within our business.
Mm-hmm.
So to be considered another moment of that is fantastic. But I think, it short sells, I think, any idea to simply say when there is a similar part, right? When you say, oh man, the Avengers is just ripping off Batman.
Yeah.
Because it's got a person with an outfit in it, like, of course, it's got a person with an outfit in it, and they like the superhero stuff. It's just ripping off Batman. It's like, look, I think at that point, people are just looking for a negative to have a negative versus saying, we're all inspired by each other.
Yeah.
We're all just ripping off Shakespeare. Like at the end of the day, every one of us is ripping off stories from the Greeks and from, the Bard and everything. There's nothing new.
Yeah.
Even what's new is still inspired by something. We're all, whether we're consciously or unconsciously, wickedly inspired. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's the best part about working at Sony right now, is I have access to all these incredible developers. Like, I am able to talk to people over at Sucker Punch, Guerrilla, Insomniac, Naughty Dog, and this is more, we are open because we are kind of all part of this connected family, right?
Yes.
The media molecule cast, like literally, there is very few people within this Sony first party window or this family that I'm not able to talk to and get inspired by an actual details, right? That's the thing that we've sort of lost, is that as it becomes owned by corporations, we don't get to share as much, right? Because everything's proprietary, it's all very secret. So GDC is no longer that thing where everybody's like, here, let me show you the code that I actually did, and here's exactly how we did this thing, and here's how we solved this rendering engine problem. We're starting to get a little bit more of that, but, we've had these things called Creative Share Weeks with several developers where, we send our developers over to their studio for a week, and they send their developers over to our studio for a week, and it's in the thick of development. So they get a desk, they get a station, and they start working on the game. But at the end of that week, they give us a download of like a report card. Hey, we solve problems like this. You solve it like this. Your way is better, or hey, our way is better. Let me show you why, right? And the same thing happens with a different group. So they'll send over artists here. We'll send over camera implementers or combat designers to another studio. And that kind of sharing is born of the GMs, right? It's born of Shannon and Herman talking and saying, we should do this. It'll make us better, right?
Yeah.
Of Evan actually saying, yeah, come on over. We'll talk to you about this random thing. That's amazing. Like, that is something that is truly born of the creative saying, we want a tiny piece of what we used to have because we will be better for it. We are better because we share.
Yeah, like there's this collective creative consciousness kind of thing that you've created.
Yeah, because what we do is so inherently technical, right?
Yeah.
There's so much technical to it that there is obviously the sort of auteur aspect, the creative aspect that is more ephemeral, that there are a small group of people that benefit of sitting around and chatting. Like, going to dinner with one of these guys is amazing because then you can really kind of share and download. But when you really go over there and you send your technical people and you find out they're taking one step to solve a problem, we're taking 50. What the heck? Let's figure out how to solve that, right? And we didn't even know that 50 was a problem.
Yeah, and like sometimes you might not have even known that there is a problem at all, and just being exposed to other ideas, just sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess you're right. I mean, in a sense, because originally the IT field was like this hobbyists and hackers getting together and sharing the ideas. This is sort of hearkening to that.
Yep.
One of the questions I had was about specifically God of War, the new God of War's relation to God of War 3. Where we leave Kratos in God of War 3, he has stabbed himself with the blade of Olympus to release hope, and then the post-credit scene shows us that he sort of dragged himself off of the cliff or something. In this game, we already see Kratos, years later he's married Faye, and I mean he's in the Norse realms and everything. But the game never actually tells us how he got from point A to point B. And now here you said the idea was to focus on the father-son story and build upon from there. So is this something that you plan on tackling eventually, or is this just something that, I mean, as far as you're concerned, is irrelevant to the vision of the story?
Oh no, it's super relevant. It is one of those things that as I started to break all of this down, and I looked at a timeline and a sort of rough outline when I was thinking about this, this aspect was so much more interesting once you found out who Faye was. Once you discovered chapter 2, I'll call it, in this journey, chapter 1 became more interesting. And if you told it chronologically, it would give away too much that would make the realization that Atreus has less special. And the realization needed to be sort of after the coming of age of Atreus. And so I realized, like, okay, while that is important, we'll intimate towards it. Like, Kratos talked about it. He talked about how he left, right? But as we do when we share things with other people that we just meet or with our children, we're guarded. We protect certain bits of information until we feel that the relationship is matured enough or that they are ready to hear what we have to say. Because with Kratos, what he has to say is pretty dark, right? His journey from Greece to Scandinavia is essentially him hitting absolute rock bottom and meeting Faye when he has hit rock bottom, right?
Yes.
And it is that relationship that pulls him out of that kind of forms the sort of unfinished sculpture of Kratos that is at the beginning of the game. But it is, to me, way more interesting. There are other avenues, other stories that we're telling that start to give you more information on that. It's more of a drip feed, but I do want to tell a very specific story of, directly linking up from 3 and what happens to him. Now, it is deliberately undefined as in the period of time because I do think there's multiple stories there. I think that there is the overarching story, and then I think there is, there are a lot of continued adventures that he goes on by himself. One of those adventures that I don't know if anybody caught was our homies over at Yacht Club Games, their Shovel Knight game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was actually on the journey from God of War 3 to Scandinavia.
And that's where that happens.
Yeah, that is one of the things that he does along his adventure.
So Shovel Knight is officially part of the God of War canon now.
Yes.
Okay, I think that'll a lot of Shovel Knight fans will appreciate that. I think.
Yes. Yeah, that was. Look, I was a huge fan of their stuff, and so when we talked about it early on, there was a bit of discussion. We were like, "Why are you going to do this?" I'm like, "I think it is a really cool way to show that he did get into adventures from the end of 3 to this one." Now, obviously, he had the place, so then people would be asking, "Well, wait, what's that all about?" But I figured we'd make it, and we wouldn't put a lot of attention on it.
Yeah.
There was actually a line that I think we ended up changing. So he said, "My future lies to the north," or "I'm searching to the north," and it was just too obvious. Like, I think if anybody had caught on to that, they'd be like, "Oh, he's going to Norse mythology. It's north, right?"
Yes.
So we took that specific direction out. But it was that concept of like Kane from Kung Fu just sort of wandering around. And the adventures, the experiences get darker and darker as he sort of descends farther into solitude and madness, right? And it's like, that is such an incredibly fertile ground to really understand, like, oh my gosh, I know what he was like in Norse myth, that first game. Wow, he went this far down. Like, I think that is a much cooler realization than telling it chronologically.
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes stories told out of order are far better than stories told in order.
Yeah, and it's really custom to the story. So, like, my intention from the beginning was to tell the chronological story until I really worked out, okay, no, this is what I want to tell, and this is way more interesting to tell it in this out-of-order fashion.
Yeah, I think I agree. Like, it would have been a little more boring if, for example, Atreus had been able to get to that point where he is at the end, say by the middle of the game, because that is such a perfect culmination of everything that has happened until that moment. So I think I agree with that. Speaking of the relationship between this game and the old game. There's this moment. I think it's actually probably exactly the halfway point, but Athena shows up, and that's this really cool sort of like. I mean, yes, I think it's also symptomatic of the game being linked to the older games, but there's also this nudge and wink at the fans of the older games. Like, you get the trophy, hello old friend, she says you will always be a monster, I am no longer your monster, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
how much, when you're so dramatically deviating from what the older games were like with this newer one, how much of this was also put in with the intent of sort of as a reconciliatory placating gift for old fans, or sort of like, fan service, so to say? Or was that on your mind at all with this?
It was on our mind to ensure that we never did fan service for the sake of fan service.
Mm-hmm.
That it always had a really strong reason to be there. I knew from the beginning we were going to have the blades. I wanted the blades to come in late in the game so that you really adjusted to the new weapon, and I wanted the moment in which the blades came in to be right after that point where you gave up about the blades ever being in the game. So it would be like, oh, I guess they're not putting them in, right? And it seemed to be right at that perfect point, because watching people's reactions while they're playing is they're having exact reactions you want them to have. That's like disbelief, giving way to enthusiasm, giving way to, no, that's probably not what they're doing, disbelief again, and then just that utter excitement. No way!
I was
and then
so
that
happy.
realization.
Yeah. I was so
think
happy in that scene.
Yeah, that to me, that is awesome. Like it then transcends the concept of, like, I didn't just, you didn't just put it in because they're familiar with it. You put it in because you're like, oh, this means something. Like that moment for Kratos when he goes to get the blades, he takes responsibility for his past. He goes back, and instead of hides from it, tries to run away from it, he owns it, and he owns it in a way that says, I personally am responsible for all of this, right? Something he's never done in his past.
Yes.
This idea of severing ties to Athena and using Athena as a proxy, as everybody else, to blame other people for the crap that he's done. And instead of saying, I'm not a monster, make my visions go away, it's more like, no, I am a monster, I get it, but I'm not your monster, and you're not pulling the strings, right? And I think that sense of the blades represent servitude to the gods. He was bonded to them and almost feeling like he was their puppet. And this idea of wrapping them around his wrists at the very time he's telling them, they don't control him anymore, and they will stay out of his head, right? I think that is a magic moment for Kratos.
Yes,
right? That is a moment where you're
really
like, wow,
empowering.
from a franchise perspective, that's something that we never did. He never took responsibility for anything.
It kind of felt like God of War grew up in that moment to me, because it's very, like you said, the first time he takes responsibility for everything he's done until then. Now, I guess one of my questions right now is, I think this is one you've been asked a whole lot, but I guess I'll ask it again for the record. Is New Game Plus something you have considered?
New Game Plus?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Look, New Game Plus is something I wanted so badly, right? And it is this constant Sophie's choice you have to make, especially when you start in the last 8 months of closing out a game. You have a huge list of features that you've just passed forward and put on a list, and so many of these things kind of had to keep getting pushed down the list, and the impact and sort of involvement of New Game Plus kept forcing it further down the list, simply because keeping it would cut a lot of other stuff, and a lot of other stuff meant stability, and completeness of pickups and stuff like that. So it is something I think there isn't anybody here that I think said, oh, we don't want to do New Game Plus. It was more like we just kept running out of time, because I think what people forget is, oh, you had 5 years, you had so much. It's like, no, you don't understand. Like, we literally were, to the last second, refining and polishing and tuning and trying to make this as perfect as possible, which is why photo mode didn't even get started until we went gold, right? Photo mode was on the list. We had photo mode in the previous game, but it was with the previous engine, so we had to rewrite it. And it relied on sort of the enthusiasm of the programmers to sort of get behind it after we just ran a 5-year marathon, to jump right in and start on that one. New Game Plus is definitely the same type of thing, is that we all love that concept. It's just, we had not started on any of that stuff. So it is it is definitely something I'm still trying to convince people of, but we'll have to see where it shakes out.
Okay. Uh, Going back to something that we were talking about was, I think, telling stories out of order. And there's this really cool mural, I think, in this game, which really early on is a depiction. There's a mural that's a depiction of the final boss fight. It sort of like spoils the final boss fight. And
Yep.
again, like, I mean, that's like a really cool, crazy, bold thing to do. But were you ever worried that players who might have familiarity with Norse mythology might put two and two together and see where it's going with something like that?
Um, yes and no. Initially, when I came up with the idea of placing the mural that close to the house as
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a beta .005 version of Faye's drawing,
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps even a subtle thing, because part of what I really want with Faye is this idea that she always surrounded Kratos and Atreus with the history that she wanted them to know, even if she couldn't let them know.
Yes.
So there's things in the house, that also indicate towards, what's going on. And I talked to the lead environment artist Nate Stevens about this because I think he was the one that had placed it in. Finally, and he might have actually worked with maybe Dan McKim. I'm not certain now because so many things are blended together. But we talked about placing this in there, and I said we should mess it up a little bit, make it feel like it's a rougher version, like a sketch of it. But if you were to pause the game and you were to make a screenshot, then you would be able to understand that it connected all the way to the end. But you'd have to kind of finish the game to even connect that. But I wanted that because every time you set up a reveal or a twist, it has way more impact when you can actually look back and say, no, we gave you information. You just had to pay attention.
Yes.
The blades are a perfect example that when Kratos is standing at the door hatch to the cellar or the underneath the house, and him and Atreus are about to go off to the journey in the mountains, and he's basically saying, I thought you said I wasn't ready, and he says, you're not, prove me wrong.
Yeah.
When he closes the door, we pan down and hold for like 10 frames and then keep going, right?
Yeah.
And that 10-frame hold is to subtly indicate to the player something is important there. Coupled with the line of, you told me never to go down there, and we've set up enough that when you go back to get it, you're like, no way, okay, right? It feels satisfying because it's not like, oh, you just randomly made that up. Like,
Yeah.
you decided that halfway through making the game. And I wanted to sort of make up for what I consider sort of my biggest blunder on God of War 2, which was the lack of clear setup that Gaia was the narrator, right? This idea that maybe you needed the fourth wall breaking bit of Stranger Than Fiction, right? Where the main character of Stranger Than Fiction started to believe he heard a narrator, like he was going through life, and all of a sudden he feels like he hears somebody narrating his life, and there's that break of the wall, and I think that feeling and that like questioning wasn't there, so it felt abrupt in the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
And I took that criticism pretty much to heart after many people had levied it against me and realized, like, damn, they're right. I could have done so much better at that I was obsessive about it on this project, in the fact that every single reveal has several supporting things in the beginning, and usually, like, throughout the adventure, we're reminding them of this, whether you catch them or not, right? Then you can go back and go, whoa, they were saying this all the way there. So much so that when you play game 2, or if we do a game 3, you will go back to the first one and go, no way, this was indicated in the first game, because I am an insane, crazy planner at this point. And that is the only thing I'm good at planning too. It's amazing. Like, I'm really, like, I found the adeptness at planning stories and sort of the creative experience, but I could not plan a day at the zoo with my family. I could not literally plan my way out of a box to try to get 5 people to do anything. I am completely useless. I don't think I can barely balance my checkbook. I'm that incompetent with every other aspect of my life. But, I can focus on this part.
See, I mean, yeah. Well, sometimes I guess making it up as you go along is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So absolutely. One of the really interesting things that I found in this game were so Atreus and Mimir sort of acted like non-annoying navis, like like those helper characters, sort of clue you in. So how do you balance being actually helpful but not being, hey, listen?
It's just being open every step of the way to knowing like the feedback. So that when the feedback comes back, it's always going to be negative. I very rarely have we ever gotten to a point where everyone's like, it's perfect, right? And it usually is like, okay, we don't really have any time left. We still would like to fix these 10 things, but all right, let's keep moving on. Knowing when to take in the feedback that says this is too much and say, you know what, I don't agree. And I think they're reacting to this. Let's fix this or let's leave it. But I think we're good here. That is really just the gut instinct that throughout development I just have to learn to trust. That says when things are annoying, you do get out of 20 people, 15 people out of 20 say it's annoying. Good, it's annoying. We need to fix this, right? If 3 people out of 20 say it, but then there's really, lead level people on the team who agree with those 3 people, then it is kind of that gut level. Okay, do they have an emotional attachment to this, which is why they're reacting so negatively? Or positively, and then I need to look at it and go, like, what do I think? What does this feel? And sometimes I don't have a clear answer as much as, like, okay, if I were to have to choose right now, this is what I would choose. Okay, I feel like that's what the right answer is.
Okay.
So it is constant evaluation.
So is there anything now that the game's out, and I mean, of course, you're no longer compelled to go back on and work on it anymore beyond additions? Is there anything that you're looking at right now and thinking this is something I would have wanted to do differently or better in this one?
There is several bosses that I had to cut throughout the game simply because we got about 15 to 20 people on each boss, and those bosses go anywhere from a year to 2 years each, which I think is something that a lot of people underestimate when they're like, there's not enough bosses in this game. I'm like, dude, I kind of agree because I want like 10 more bosses in there, but the game would take 20 years to make.
Yeah.
So I would definitely there is even some theories out there where people are looking at characters in the background and going, who is this? What is this character? Why do they have such a giant bird in Helheim? And wondering why we would put so much time and effort on that thing. And it's, maybe because it was a giant boss at one point. And that is the nature of development as you start to look at so many different facets of it and realize that it is a great place to be when ambition overshadows time and ability, right? That you're saying, I want to do so much, and we have to start choosing which is going to have the greatest impact. It is hard, I think, to know what to finally let go of, right? That you fight and you fight and you fight, and you have to know, okay, you know what? This thing is not as worth fighting for as this other thing. I will fight for this other thing. I will let this other thing go.
Yeah.
I think that is just experience. That is years of experience that will let you know what is important to you and what you're trying to make.
So speaking of all the things that players are noticing, and I mean, it's a massive world, so it's littered with lots of little, secrets and collectibles. Is there any major, I guess, cutscene or some story or something that has not been stumbled upon yet?
Ooh, wow. No, I mean, I really, really believed the sweet live-action game that I put into the collector's edition would be something that would take a while for people to figure out. I think the only thing they didn't figure out is that the 2 toy pieces in the Stonemason edition of Brock and Sindri had little markings on the bottom of them, and the intent was to actually place them on the correct position of the map and then actually have them walk the journey. So people just looked at the map and just mapped it out with their fingers and stuff, not realizing that we included 2 toy pieces of Brock and Sindri to actually form a little journey that you would walk through and then reach that point and then see the 2 toy pieces, and in between them, that's where the secret treasure was hidden. Huh. I love that thing, and I had to keep that secret from most of the team simply because I knew the more people that knew about it, the easier it would be to get out there and leak. And I always think that it's going to take longer for people to figure out stuff. The fact that I went a week was impressive because really most people figure things out in a few hours.
Yes.
It feels like people consume everything really fast, and that's not a bad thing. It's just, you'd hope that it would be like, the nuclear disarmament cinematic hidden in Metal Gear.
Yeah.
Where it was only by a bug or something like that revealed it, and it probably would have gone unnoticed beyond that point. I don't think I have something as amazingly meta as that. But I still think there is There is one thing that nobody's found yet, I know for certain, because I haven't seen any stories about it, but I'm not going to say what that is.
Of course.
Let them figure that out.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's any cinematics, per se, because it seems like everybody's been able to get all the different permutations. Not one person, but combined between all people, you're starting to get the variations on certain stories and moments that only happen once. Somebody hits those,
So, I mean, something or the other has been, at some point, like, everything has had at least one person stumble upon them.
I think so. Like, I haven't seen stories about all of it, but I have to imagine that the amount of energy and time people are putting into this, so many people are platinuming the game and putting in, 40, 50 hours into it, which is amazing, because I definitely felt skittish about saying 25 to 35 hours when I was first asked about gameplay time, simply because the game was still getting put together, and I know every time anybody on the creative side says, this is how long the game is, there is a group of people out there that are like, I want to prove you wrong and call you out. I beat your game in 4 hours. You suck, right?
Yeah.
Every time, like, it doesn't matter. It's the contrarian inside of all of us that wants to say, you lied, right?
Yeah.
Downgrade, right? But,
downgrade.
it's a surprising thing to actually have people put more time in than I ever expected.
I can imagine that. I mean, like, it's something I've always noticed with all these games that come out, like Metal Gear, like, which you mentioned, and like Skyrim and Zelda and all, and like people are posting all these crazy things years later. So maybe a year from now, someone will have discovered that final secret. So I guess my last question is, what were your favorite games in the last 5 years or so that sort of influenced this one?
Favorite games in the last 5 years that influenced this one. Witcher 3 is just utterly astounding. The source material being so many different books, I think, and the fact that the first 2 games I had played were just great, and they were lesser known, I think, PC versions, and where they kind of crescendoed and really refined what they did in Witcher 3 was just astounding to me. That is such a good game. And quite obviously, Uncharted and Last of Us both, especially Lost Legacy.
Yes.
This idea that they began Lost Legacy as a DLC, and it is a full-blown game in its own right, and fantastic to challenge the concept of Uncharted is only Drake, and it's like, no, actually, Uncharted is a feeling, right? Uncharted is this sort of unbridled sense of adventure and possibility, right?
Yes.
And I think it's amazing that they were able to do it, and do it with what seems so effortlessly. It was such an absolutely brilliant game. Horizon, I mean,
yes.
That one to come out 2 weeks before the much lauded Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
Right? And still be this game that sticks in the brain pan of so many gamers. Like, how amazing is that? Like, I think those guys at Guerrilla are awesome. Obviously, Breath of the Wild is brilliant. I love it. But, it says something about their abilities as game makers, as creatives, to be able to punch through the noise on that. And I don't mean to denigrate Breath of the Wild by saying noise. I'm just saying that when a game of that scale and that sort of critical and sort of like fan impact comes out, it just seems like everything else gets lost.
Yes.
And they didn't get lost. They actually resonated, and they created a moment in history that I think is just absolutely amazing.
Yes.
Actually, this is sort of post, so it didn't really influence our game, but it's influencing the way I look at other games in the future. Is the first, I think I've gotten the first 4 or 5 hours of Far Cry 5, and they did a lot of really cool things in there. A lot. They made some really, really smart decisions in the way that they engage and they draw you in that really made me take notice. I was very, very impressed. And then, I've said this before, but Ashraf Ishmael's games, Black Flag and Origins, are just amazing. I think that guy is he works with an incredible team, but he has a team, like, he has a small country, right? I feel like I have a lot of people to deal with. I mean, that dude is, like, dealing with an absurd amount of complexity and staff. And
like 1,500 people.
Was that?
Like 1,500 people at a time or something.
Yes, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, it is so absurd, and he just seems to be able to, one after another, right? Prove it. Double down. Go for Black Flag, do Origins. And that was just, both of those, I think, are just superb. And I have not made it all the way through. My break begins in about a month, and then I will be making it through my backlog and hopefully finishing a lot of these games. But those were impressive. The one that influenced this game the most is Resident Evil 4, though. And Resident Evil, the series in general. I will refer to the Resident Evil series as the Beastie Boys of video games, in that they are unafraid to reinvent themselves multiple times and do it in such a dramatic fashion that you show a creative boldness that is very rarely shown. That, to me, was inspirational, to point to people and say, when we were making God of War in the early years, Resident Evil 4 came out, and we were all blown away. We all realized it was a line of demarcation in sort of game development.
Yeah.
And that feeling was repeated with 7, and we were already well under our way for making the game, but it still just helped reinforce and prove the point that fortune favors the bold.
Yes.
And that you have to, as a creative, as a group of creatives, you have to step into the unknown.
Yes.
You have to jump off the cliff, because that is where greatness is, and greatness for yourself. Not greatness as in I'm great, but more in the sense that all this hard work is worth it.
I mean, absolutely, and like the Kratos sort of jump, gods of Olympus have abandoned me.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yes. But anyway, thank you so much for taking this time and talking to us about so many things. And thank you for the game. It's awesome. And
Thank you, sir. This was wonderful.
It was, and I'm going to be looking forward to whatever you do next. Really, 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 excitedly.
Oh, thank you. You will very much enjoy my Vacation the game.
You know what? Yeah, I think
but
it'll be...
after Vacation the game will be the next game.
I think there's a PSVR game for that. I think there's a PSVR game for vacationing.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah. It's called Arizona. What is it? Arizona Sunshine? The one where you go shoot zombies in Arizona?
Probably. I'm going to be surprised. Anyway, thank you so much. And you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you too.
Bye.
And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.